April 20th, 1945. Berlin no longer resembles the capital of a thousand-year empire. It is a smoking ruin. Skeletons of buildings pierce the sky. The streets are choked with rubble and the twisted wreckage of tram cars. The air is thick with soot and the stench of decay that no spring breeze can wash away. The Soviet army is just a few kilometers from the city center. Artillery shells are already raining down on the government district. The ground trembles constantly. But the epicenter of this madness is not on the streets. It is 10 meters underground. On this day, Adolf Hitler marks his 56th birthday. It will be his final public appearance in history. What happens in these coming hours, and how he spends his final 10 days, is not just a chronicle of defeat. It is perhaps the most detailed psychological portrait of absolute power colliding with absolute collapse. We are used to seeing Hitler on podiums, screaming, gesturing, hypnotizing the masses. But today, you will see a different man. A man emerging from a concrete tomb to perform an act that finally destroys the myth that he ever loved his people. He climbs the stairs from the bunker into the Reich Chancellery garden. The garden has been churned up by craters. The trees are splintered by explosions. The camera captures this moment. Look closely at this footage. It is the only visual evidence of his condition mere days before his death. A line of soldiers is drawn up before him. But this is not the elite of the Wehrmacht. These are not SS veterans who survived the inferno of the Eastern Front. These are children, boys from the Hitler Youth and the Volkssturm. Some have barely turned 12. They wear military uniforms that hang like sacks, far too large for their childish shoulders. Their helmets slide down over their eyes. In their hands, they clutch Panzerfausts, disposable anti-tank weapons with which they are being forced to face heavy IS-2 and T-34 tanks. Hitler moves down the line. Look at his walk. He shuffles. His back is bent, as if a concrete slab is pressing him down. He hides his left hand behind his back. Why? Because it is trembling uncontrollably. The result of advanced Parkinson's disease and the monstrous cocktail of drugs his doctors have been pumping into him for years. He does not look 56. He looks 80. He is a wreck. He approaches the children. He tweaks their cheeks. He attempts a smile, mimicking fatherly care. He pins iron crosses to their chests. For what? For the fact that they are, essentially, committing suicide to prolong his life for a few more hours. Does he know the war is lost? Absolutely. Does he tell them, run home, hide in the cellars, save your lives, your mothers need you? No. He praises their bravery. He speaks of victory. And he sends them back to the slaughter. In that moment, looking into the eyes of a 12-year-old child he is sentencing to death, Hitler reveals his true nature. For him, these children are not the future of the nation. They are disposable assets. Sand to be thrown into the gears of the advancing Soviet machine to buy himself one more day in the bunker. To understand the depth of this cynicism, we must understand the context. By April 20th, the ring around Berlin has almost closed. The Americans and British have halted at the Elbe, leaving the storming of the capital to the Red Army. There is no hope. Logistics are broken. There is no ammunition. Yet Goebbels' propaganda continues to operate at full capacity, promising that wonder weapons or a sudden split between the Allies will save the Reich. Does Hitler believe this, or is he pretending? Inside the Führer bunker, the atmosphere is what historian Antony Beevor called a madhouse in hell. The bunker is a hermetically sealed world with harsh artificial light, stale air, humming fans, and the constant smell of the diesel generator. Day and night have lost their meaning. While children die under tank treads, above, down below, deep underground, a life completely detached from reality continues. Officers drink champagne. Secretaries discuss dresses. Eva Braun plays the gramophone to drown out the sound of explosions from the surface. It is a feast during a plague in the most literal sense. But what is Hitler himself doing? If you think he is commanding the defense 24/7, you are mistaken. He had another, far stranger, and more terrifying obsession. Picture this: 1944 and 1945. German cities are being wiped off the face of the earth by carpet bombing. Hamburg, Dresden, Cologne turn to ash. Thousands of refugees, starvation, chaos, and Hitler spends hours locked away with his architect, Albert Speer. They lean over gigantic architectural models. This is the project Welthauptstadt Germania, World Capital Germania. Hitler planned to completely rebuild Berlin, to demolish old neighborhoods, reroute the River Spree, and build boulevards hundreds of meters wide. The center was to be the Great Hall of the People, a cyclopean structure with a dome so massive that it would have formed its own weather system inside, with rain falling from the condensed breath of 180,000 people. It was the architecture of domination. A human being in such a city was meant to feel like an ant in the face of the state's grandeur. And now, April 1945. Everything is collapsing. Yet Hitler asks for the models to be brought to the bunker. He stares at them for hours under the lamp. He moves miniature buildings, changing the layout of streets for a city that will never exist. He discusses which materials to use for the triumphal arch, while above his head, the real Berlin is being ground into gravel. This isn't just escapism. It is evidence of how a psychopath's mind works. Speer, in his memoirs, described Hitler's reaction to the Allied bombings. Do you think he was enraged by the death of civilians? Did he weep over destroyed cultural monuments? No. Speer recalled that Hitler was actually pleased. "This is excellent," he said. "The bombings are doing the dirty work for us. They are clearing the space. We won't have to spend money demolishing the old buildings. Now, we can build Germania faster." Think about that. The leader of a country looks at the burning homes of his citizens and sees only free demolition work for a construction site. The people burning alive in those houses are, to him, an annoying hindrance, debris to be cleared away. He had no empathy, not an ounce. For him, only the idea and the vision existed. Everything else was an obstacle. If you think this is an exaggeration, remember the Nero Decree. On March 19, 1945, Hitler issued a directive officially titled Demolitions on Reich Territory. The meaning was simple: if Germany loses, the enemy must inherit nothing. Bridges, factories, railways, dams, power plants, food stockpiles, everything necessary for the survival of the German people after the war had to be blown up. When Speer, horrified, tried to object, arguing that this would condemn the nation to starvation and extinction, Hitler replied with a sentence that should be engraved on the monument of every dictator, so we remember what they are. He said, "If the war is lost, the nation will also perish. There is no need to consider the basis even of a most primitive existence any longer. On the contrary, it is better to destroy these things ourselves, for the nation has proved to be the weaker, and the future belongs solely to the stronger Eastern nation. Those who remain after the battle are of little value anyway, for the good have fallen." There it is, the full stop. He sentenced his own people to death because the people did not live up to his expectations. This is not patriotism. This is narcissism on a cosmic scale. Either I rule the world, or the world should not exist at all. Back to the bunker. After that appearance with the children on April 20th, Hitler never saw sunlight again. On April 22nd, he suffers his famous breakdown, the one so often parodied on the internet, the scene from the movie Downfall. But in reality, there was nothing funny about it. Hitler orders a counterattack by a non-existent group of forces under the command of General Steiner. He moves flags on a map that represent nothing in reality. When the generals timidly tell him that Steiner has no one to attack with, that he has no men and no equipment, Hitler explodes. He screams for hours. He accuses the Wehrmacht of betrayal, cowardice, and sabotage. He shouts that everyone has betrayed him. And at the end of this hysteria, for the first time, he says aloud, "The war is lost." But he immediately adds, "But I will never leave Berlin. I will shoot myself here." And even after this admission, he does not issue an order to surrender. The slaughter continues for another week. Thousands of people die every hour simply because he is afraid to face a courtroom. He stalls for time to organize his own exit. Around him in the bunker, a theater of the absurd plays out. Magda Goebbels, the wife of the propaganda minister, has brought her 6 children into the bunker. They play in the corridors while the adults discuss exactly how and when they will all die. Hitler plays with them, drinks tea, while Magda has already decided she will poison them all because a world without National Socialism has no meaning. This is a cult, a suicide cult determined to drag as many people as possible into the grave with them. April 29th. Soviet soldiers are fighting on Potsdamer Platz. Machine gun fire is audible. The ventilation system is sucking smoke into the bunker. Hitler decides it is time. First, a surreal wedding. Hitler marries Eva Braun. A minor official, pulled from a Volkssturm battalion, trembles as he processes the paperwork. In the form under ancestry, Hitler must confirm his Aryan purity. It is madness, adhering to the bureaucratic procedures of racial laws mere hours before death. Then, a small reception. Champagne. Talk of the old days. And then, he goes to dictate his political testament. This is the moment of truth. The man knows he will die tomorrow. He has one last chance to address humanity. Perhaps admit mistakes. Perhaps ask for forgiveness. Perhaps, at the very least, take responsibility to ease the fate of the remaining Germans. Historians have preserved this document, every word, and reading it evokes horror. There is not a single word of remorse. Hitler declares, "It is untrue that I or anyone else in Germany wanted the war in 1939. Once again, like a broken record, he blames everything on international Jewry. He justifies the Holocaust. He does not mourn the 50 million dead. He mourns only himself. He writes that he was betrayed by generals, by officers, by soldiers. In the final paragraph, he demands that the leadership and the people continue to observe the racial laws and mercilessly resist the poisoner of all nations. He leaves life with poison on his lips, literally and metaphorically. His hatred survived him. April 30th. After lunch, Hitler says goodbye to the staff. He is calm. He hands out cyanide capsules like souvenirs. At 3:30 p.m., he and Eva Braun retreat to his private study. No one really heard the gunshot over the noise of the ventilation and the explosions outside. When the aides entered, it was over. Eva Braun had taken the poison. Hitler had crushed a capsule and shot himself in the temple. Their bodies were carried out to the garden, the same garden where 10 days earlier he had decorated the children. They were doused in petrol and set on fire. When Soviet soldiers seized the Chancellery, they found only charred remains. And so, looking at this story, we must ask ourselves the main question. Not, was he insane? Writing it all off as madness is too simple. It absolves responsibility. Psychiatrists who studied his profile say, he was sane. He understood what he was doing. He possessed logic. It was just that his value system was turned inside out. Hitler was not a monster from a fairy tale, possessed by demons. He was a human who cried when his mother died, a human who loved dogs and sweets, a human who could be polite. And that is exactly what is most terrifying, because it proves that a human being is capable of shutting off their humanity. He silenced his conscience with ideology. He convinced himself that the goal justifies any, absolutely any, means. He inflated his ego to the size of the universe, where the lives of other people were merely dust. Many ask, did his conscience torment him in the end? History's answer is unequivocal. No. he died feeling resentful of the whole world. He believed himself to be the victim. And this is a lesson we have no right to forget. Dictators do not leave with repentance. They are willing to burn the world to the ground rather than admit they were wrong. In April 1945, it wasn't just a dictator who died in that bunker. The idea that a great goal is worth even a single tear of a child died there too. But unfortunately, humanity is forced to learn this lesson over and over again. We created this channel to remember, to know how to recognize this evil when it starts talking about greatness again, demanding human lives in return. If you found this interesting, subscribe to the channel. We will continue to analyze the history of World War II without myths and without censorship, relying on facts. Let me know in the comments, if Hitler had survived and faced the Nuremberg trials, what do you think he would have said in his defense? See you in the next video.